everyone, I am Chris and this is Simply Classic. Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to talk about giving your AllyBees a little bit higher end feel. So I'm going to talk to you about adding some padding to the shoulder strap. So for this you're going to need the pattern piece for the AllyBee. You're going to need the two pieces that I tell you to cut out in the pattern itself. And then you're going to need a piece of foam. Now, the foam does not have to be as big as the actual pattern piece. It can be a little bit smaller because we are going to cut some off the bottom. So just go through your scrap bin and find a piece of foam that'll work for you. So then you're going to need glue, edge coat, all the regular stuff to finish up this handle. So let me show you how to do it. Okay, so all the pieces I just talked about are laid out here. We have our pattern piece, our two pieces cut to the measurements in the cutting chart, and then our extra piece of foam. So we're going to start out by just using one of our actual pieces that we cut to the measurement in the cutting chart in our pattern piece. And we're going to start out by going ahead and tracing this and cutting it out. So I'm just going to use my Soline air erasing pen, and you can either do this on the right side or the wrong side. And I'm just going to trace it out, and then we're going to cut it out. Now you can use a rotary cutter for this, or you can go ahead and use a pair of scissors. I'm just going to use a pair of scissors, and I'm going to cut on the lines. Now we're going to be trimming this down again once we sew everything together. So it doesn't have to be perfect. But the reason why we need to cut this first, unlike what we went over in the pattern, is because we need to know exactly where to place our foam. So we're just cut, cut, cut. Okay. And here we have our piece. So now take a piece of foam, like I said, it can be a scrap piece of foam, and take your pattern piece again, and we're going to trace this out one more time on the foam. And you can see here my foam is a little bit narrow. That's okay, because we're actually going to be cutting this a little bit smaller. Okay, so there we have it traced out, and you can see I actually went off of the foam a little bit here on the sides, and again, that's okay. Now you can either eyeball this or you can actually measure, but I'm going to cut this about 3/8 of an inch shorter, just inside this line. So you can take your ruler and certainly do that, but I'm just going to kind of eyeball this, you know, anywhere between 1/4 and 3/8 of an inch. And basically what we're trying to do here is to make this piece smaller than our actual pattern piece, because once we sew, we don't want to see the foam peeking through. Okay, so I'm going to lay this down and see how it looks. And I'm actually going to be using a 1/4 inch seam allowance when I sew this. So I'm going to come in a little bit more. I'm going to cut off just a little bit more on these sides. Also, I don't want this to go all the way to the end. I want it to stop probably about here, which is roughly 6 or 7 inches from the bottom, just because we don't want this foam to be in when we go to rivet and attach this to the bag. We'd rather have it short, and your shoulder is not going to be down here anyway. So I'm just going to cut this right about here, and then I'm going to cut these sides just a little bit more. And you don't have to be perfect with this. It just needs to be about right. So looking at this, that looks about right to me. Okay, so you can kind of get an idea of how much space you want to leave. So from here, we're going to use some Fabri-Tac. You can also use some temporary spray adhesive or permanent spray adhesive, whichever you have. And we're just going to glue this on. This is just coming out real slow, but it is coming. And you just need enough to kind of tack it down. Okay, and we're just going to lay this down right on top here. Just like that. So now take your other piece, and we're going to glue this together as well. So I'm just going to put a little bit of glue around the edges here. I'm going to make sure I get it down here as well. And just put a little bit here in the middle. Okay, that looks good. So just go ahead and center this. Let's lay it down. And we're just going to press it and let it go ahead and in here. Okay, so once this dries, I'm going to take it over to my machine, and I'm going to basically complete this just like you do the rest of just follow the pattern. So I'm going to stitch 1/4 inch in all the way around, and then I'm going to go ahead and trim it down, and then I would edge coat it. So I'm going to go ahead and sew it, and then I'm going to show you what it looks like. Here it is all sewn. And I used a black thread so you could see it real good. And I'm sure you can't see in the picture, but it's almost got, see, it's got a little loft to it. It's got that foam, and it ends right here. So from here, I'm just going to go ahead and trim this down to 1/8 inch. And that's going to even up all my edges, and it's going to prepare it for edge coat. You want to make sure you use the best scissors you have for this. Or you can use a rotary blade and a ruler to do it as well. Whatever you would prefer. I actually feel like sometimes when I use a rotary blade it doesn't cut even, and that's why I like to use scissors. And what I mean by that is maybe the upper layer doesn't cut as even with the bottom layer. I don't know. I'm sure it's probably user error, but I like scissors better when it comes to this kind of thing. Okay. So there we go. So now this is all ready for edge coat, and we've got a nice padded shoulder strap. Okay, so go ahead and add that to your AllyBees to get that high-end designer feel. And until next time, happy sewing.